This is a story about Greg. Greg is a bicycle. One day, Greg's owner decided he no longer had a need for Greg, as he had just bought a bright and shiny town car to get him from A to B. Unsure of how to utilize his newfound freedom, simply waited. Greg found the people walking by rather intimidating. Their fast pace and stern faces made Greg feel discarded. Greg thought to himself, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" However, his dread was completely forgotten when Daisy waltzed into his life. Greg had never seen a woman of such beauty. Her hair flowed as freely as she walked, and it was adorned with flowers after which she was named. She was perfect. Daisy was similarly struck by Greg. Daisy made the uncharacteristically spontaneous decision to bring Greg home with her. Getting to know each other was a bit peculiar at first. The two found that they had few similar interests. But they soon found it hardly mattered to them. Things were going better than either of them could have imagined. Daisy decided to give Greg some tokens of her affection. One wicker basket in lieu of hands, and one shiny metal bell to better express himself. Greg had never known such kindness. He could not believe how beautiful she looked as she struggled to find the right words to say. Greg finally chimed in. Daisy was head over heels, Greg seat over tire. The two were in love. Daisy decided to throw a dinner party and prepared meticulously. She invited her very best friends. Greg would have invited his friends, but unfortunately he did not have any. Greg thought to himself, "My judgment is mere minutes away. How could they accept a love like ours?" But instead he said, her friends did not share her love for Greg. They all took turns expressing their veiled criticisms with their dear friend Daisy.
I didn't know that was your type.
So this is just a fling. How do your parents feel about him? As the evening came to its long-awaited end, they said their goodbyes and headed off to bed. A stillness lay in the air that night. For the first time, the two went to bed without a word. Alone again, but this time far worse. Greg felt spurned by this judgmental world, and with that, rolled off in solitude. Greg thought to himself, "How could this world be so cruel, damning me for my appearance? They see not what brings us together, merely how they can drive us apart." Greg was depressed. Greg missed the kindness Daisy had shared with him and the love they had forged together. Out of all the bikes in all the cities, she found him. It would serve as an insult to serendipity if he let the judgments of ignorant people spoil something so grand. He said, Greg thought perhaps the peacock approach may work. He bought fancy streamers for his handles. He even paid a little extra and got his tires waxed. In an attempt to be nonchalant, Greg blurted out, Greg then thought he would remind her of the great times they had with a sweet treat they two had often shared. But alas, the sun had other plans. The ever-tenacious little bicycle decided to make one more gesture. He bundled together several flowers, the likes of which she had so beautifully adorned her hair that wonderful day, and tucked neatly within a poem he had written to immortalize his undying affection. It pained Greg to see her so upset, even more than it hurt him to be alone. And sometimes, if you love something, you have to let it go. When Daisy awoke in the morning and found the flowers, she began to cry, much like the night before, only different. Greg was adjusting to his new life of solitude when he heard music to his ears. "Greg," Daisy called in the distance. "There you are." People gasped and gawked and pointed and stared, but no longer would the two let that keep them apart. They were in love. Real love, the kind that knows no bounds. Nothing could stand between Greg and Daisy now. And so ends the story of Greg. But it is not the end of Greg and Daisy. For Greg wasn't just a bicycle. He was a bicycle in love.